Good morning. So I am recording some vocal parts today. I have been meaning to do this for a long time, and now that a baby is on the way, this feels like it's now or never. I feel like once the baby's here, I'm gonna, one, be very, very busy, and two, it's gonna be very difficult to get a clean vocal take in my house with a baby, because I've heard that they're quite loud. I've heard it from the babies themselves. But I also thought this would just be a good time to reflect on old ways of thinking that are potentially pitfalls. And again, it's because these are things that have been sold to us. And I mean that both figuratively and literally. This is the setup that I have. I'm in my bedroom right now. I've got an Aston Halo. I have a microphone. I have a MacBook, and I have an Apollo Solo, which I am very fortunate to have because of work. I'm not trying to pretend that this is going to be accessible to everybody, but the point I want to make is that in this instance we're talking about making music, but really for any craft or anything that you might want to pursue, it's very easy to think that in order to do the thing you're going to have to spend a lot of money, or you're going to have to go into a studio, or you're going to have to get the right people on board, you're going to have to hire experts, spend loads of money on the best gear. And that's just not the case. These things here are they're not cheap. I'm not going to pretend that they're cheap, but when you compare them to hiring a studio for a week, it's a reasonable cost for what it is that I'm trying to pursue. And by owning these things, it means I can try and get really good at using them. And then should a time come where I outgrow them and I need to replace them and get something better, then I can do that. And this is worth reminding ourselves about, because I used to be the kind of person who would consider the buying of equipment a prerequisite to being good at the craft that I was trying to be skilled in. As if it's possible to buy yourself better. That's not a thing, but it's very easy to think that that's a thing. Whereas if you just get the equipment that you can afford, or that you have to hand, or that is free, get as good as you can with that before you upgrade to something, because you need to upgrade, because you have outgrown the equipment or the software that you have. You'll end up being way better at whatever it is that you are trying to achieve, and you will save money in the long term. And it means that when you actually come to buy the gear, you know more about what it is that you need, rather than just hearing that something's top of the line, top end, and thinking, well, I want to be top of the line, top end, so I'm going to buy that top of the line, top end thing. Doesn't work like that. But I thought it did for so long. How far I have come. I'm very pleased.
Take a look at the light that it had to be. When all was said and done, I'm not disappointed, it's with some relief that you can plug directly at the sun. But I know who'd I'd have loved to be if I ever felt I had the choice. Investing in delusion gave my heart to substitution for the trifling token of my honest voice.
So it's the next day now, and this video is sort of turning into a creativity video. And there are two things that have come up for me that I would like to discuss, because I think that if I had just realized these things earlier, life would be so much easier. And if you're watching this channel, then the likelihood is that you are a bit similar to me, so I feel like this is worth saying. How good do you think you are at anticipating how long things are going to take? Because I think that is a really important skill that I've massively overlooked and has caused a lot of anxiety and self-judgment in my life. For example, this weekend, Charles has been away. In my head, something that I thought was physically possible was that in the 2 days of me having an empty house, I thought I was going to get all of my vocals recorded for basically every single song that I've ever written, ever. I was going to clean the entire flat. I was going to film loads of YouTube videos. I guess it's good to be positive, but when I think back at my creative time, a lot of it is me beating myself up for not having done as much as I thought that I should be doing. And I'm not good at knowing how much I should be doing. I can't do that very well. So if we take the vocal recordings that I was working on yesterday, I would say it probably takes me about, if it went really smoothly, it would probably take me about 4 hours. And that's assuming that I do not get a sore throat, or I do not get tired or fatigued in any way. And also I'm pregnant, so I don't know why I thought I would be able to do all these things. I've basically finished 2 songs, and I haven't cleaned the flat, and I'm doing a bit of a YouTube video right now. It just makes me think how motivating it must be to know how long things are going to take, have things take that long, and then feel pleased that you have achieved your goal because your goal was a sensible goal. Whereas I feel like I've spent most of my life setting unrealistic goals and having unrealistic expectations because I can't figure out how long things generally take. Or rather, I'm just incredibly positive, which is nice. Like, bless me for thinking that way. Like, good for you. But also, ultimately, what are you doing? Sort that out. And the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about is how creativity is the opposite of consumption. And therefore, minimalism is quite a helpful guide when it comes to doing anything creative because you appreciate what is actually directing you towards your goal and what is not. Because there are some things that are useful to consume when it comes to creating something. So as I was talking about at the beginning of the video, there's probably some equipment that you will need. There are most likely ideas and concepts that you could consume that will spark your own ideas. Consumption on the whole is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's the constant overconsumption and distraction-led life that is becoming incredibly normal these days. And one of the reasons that this is coming up is that we are having to think about what kind of life we want our child to lead and who we need to be in order to make that happen. And I sometimes see consumption and distraction as the antithesis of creativity. And I think that creativity, while it's very often seen as perhaps like a skill or a hobby or maybe something a little frivolous, it's something additional to life, it's something that's tagged on. I think that it's more important to see creativity as a part of the everyday and a part of your philosophy for moving through life, because it's through creative thinking that you are able to actually consider paths that your life could take, or to be able to envision possibilities for what your life may be. And I think that these are incredibly important to instill in a child. And I see it all the time as a teacher, this just being knocked out of children because it's in them, they have it, and then they unlearn it. And I think it is such a shame because without creative thinking, you cannot properly think, I guess. Like, you are condemned to the status quo in some form. And that doesn't mean that, in order to live a flourishing life, you have to be a painter. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that the essential elements that come with creativity benefit the everyday in a way that I don't think we can properly understand. And to look around and see the comfort that people find in consumption, I think is very telling of this. And it's so easily done. These things are so ingrained, and I really want to work out how to not ingrain them in the child that I create. But we'll just have to see how that goes. But I think that's maybe a lot more important than I would have initially thought. That's another lesson that minimalism taught me. It's really good, minimalism. I'm a big fan. Don't know if you knew.
Holding back each minute